The world of video game franchises is complicated, like really complicated. For every underrated cult classic series out there, like Suikoden or Gravity Rush, the world gets another Skyrim release. At this point, I'm sure even the most devout Elder Scrolls fans are sick of having to put up with the 17th version released this year. But you know who's not sick of releases? Golden Sun fans. My fellow adepts out there on the internet just can't seem to let hope die for the return of the Golden Sun series, with titles like Tactics Ogre getting yet another release of Let Us Cling Together, and with Bravely Default 2 finally releasing after many years of pressure. The fact that a series isn't a AAA cash cow doesn't seem to be a limitation anymore. I mean, hell, if Trials of Mana and Live Alive, of all things, can get released, then absolutely anything is possible. Heck, maybe we'll even get yet another one of those Skyrim releases we've been all dying for. Hello and welcome. I am Zabraxi. Now that I've already poked fun at Golden Sun fans and Skyrim in the same video, I think it's finally time we finish our journey through Weyard with Golden Sun Dark Dawn. I gotta be honest, I'm a little nervous about this one because some of you hate this game, like absolutely despise it. I actually had a poll where I asked which Golden Sun game was some of your favorites, and more of you voted for The Legend of Dragoon than Dark Dawn. Damn, that's rough, buddy. The core question on my mind through my 40 plus hours in Dark Dawn was, is it really as bad as everyone says? On that poll I mentioned earlier asking people what their favorite Golden Sun game was, I laughed when I read this reply that simply said, I'm horrified someone actually voted for Golden Sun Dark Dawn. This got a pretty good laugh out of me. And then also some slight depression as I realized that if this is how fans feel about a game that I hadn't played yet, then man, I might need to prepare myself. But what happened here? I mean, Golden Sun on the Game Boy Advance is easily one of the most important games on that platform. It was the third best selling RPG on the hardware, only falling behind the juggernaut that is Pokemon and the eccentric Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga. We will get to you one day, I promise. Despite that massive feat, as well as also selling better than a Zelda game, Golden Sun is still often referred to as a cult classic. While I personally think that the term of cult classic doesn't accurately apply to a title that is in the top 25 most sold games on a platform that actually has 2 entries in that list, I do agree with the sentiment that the original is still grossly underappreciated after all these years. It's in a weird spot for sure. It reminds me a lot of Earthbound, where people now know about the game to a significant degree. However, despite knowing exactly why Earthbound is such an important experience of the 16-bit era, many of the same people who sing its praises still actually haven't played it. I know so many people who praise Golden Sun. They talk highly about the game, and even give detailed examples as to why it's such an important title, yet they actually haven't embarked on that journey across Weyard themselves. I'm in a similar boat actually with Suikoden 2 as of right now. I know so much of why it's beloved and am able to regurgitate those same facts, but as of this exact moment that I'm recording this, I haven't played the game yet. Soon. I'll play both of you soon, I swear. Just give me some time. One of the most interesting things about the original Golden Sun to me is that it's not actually all that innovative. I mean, the most innovative thing it did was visuals. It was Golden Sun that introduced the world to an early but beautiful example of what the HD 2D style could look like 17 years before Octopath Traveler showed up. What Golden Sun did, though, was get a significant group of people who might not normally enjoy JRPGs, and it dragged them in. I made the same claim in my original episode about Golden Sun. I stand by the title of that episode, that Golden Sun is the perfect gateway JRPG. Its story isn't actually anything groundbreaking. The characters are incredibly simple, and the combat is nothing complex considering the scope of what the genre was capable of even then. However, it did everything well enough, and the combination of Jin and Synergy gave players the ability to feel clever in traversing the world, and that exudes this aura that is far more interesting and inviting at the same time than most other JRPGs at the time. After completing the first Golden Sun game and realizing that you failed in your mission, it's then that the Lost Age is able to take everything that the first game taught you and now expose players to some of the more true depth that can exist in a JRPG without entirely overwhelming those players. The Lost Age is potentially the perfect sequel. We explore old areas, adventure new areas, combine both parties from each game, and attempt to wrap up all of the unanswered questions that were still being introduced in part 1 of the series. While this still doesn't have anything as complex as demon manipulation like an SMT or Persona, and it doesn't have combat as active in real time as The Legend of Dragoon, and doesn't have the incredibly, oh my god, my life will never be the same again, reflection as Final Fantasy IX, keeping everything simple to learn allowed so many who never explored Japanese role-playing games to get truly lost in this world. And also probably literally lost because finding out where the hell to go was like half the battle in the Lost Age. But all in all, in both Golden Sun games, they were a decent success. They were both in the top 5 best-selling RPGs on the Game Boy Advance, and it appeared that Nintendo might have had a solid traditional JRPG franchise back after losing Final Fantasy to Sony. Everything was looking pretty damn good for Golden Sun fans. And then 7 years of nothing. No news, no hope. But it wasn't like Camelot had ceased making games during that time. Oh no, they were still very busy making sports games. Sweet. We got Mario Golf Toadstool Tour. Okay, that one was actually pretty awesome. We got Mario Golf Advanced Tour, Mario Power Tennis, Mario Tennis Power Tour. We love golf, and Mario Power Tennis again, but this time without controller support for some reason. And then, finally, at E3 2009, Reggie Fils-Aimé, most famous for his time as vice president of marketing at Panda Express, walked on stage and announced that Golden Sun DS was in development. The following year, the subtitle of Dark Dawn would become official, and it was now that fans could get properly excited. Yes, 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 yes! I remember seeing the trailer for Dark Dawn for the first time and being excited to jump back into the franchise, but I also couldn't seem to let go of this small nagging question in the back of my mind. Do I still like Golden Sun? In many ways, it's a bit of a silly question to ask, right? I had played the original and fell in love with it, but I actually hadn't played The Lost Age yet by this point from, well, just not having the opportunity to ever own it. Also, 7 years was a long time at that point in my life. I went from being a punk little shithead in 6th grade in middle school to now being a punk big shithead that had graduated from high school. There's a lot of change in one's interests during those years, and apparently I wasn't the only one concerned about this either. The entire Golden Sun development team shared the same fear. As Hiroyuki Takahashi, one of the co-creators of Golden Sun, stated in an interview, quote, "During the development, we were concerned that players have generationally changed after 7 years. Although the success of the older titles shaped the direction for this title, we were not convinced that doing the same thing again would lead to success," end quote. This hesitation is rather fair. However, the irony is that in many ways, Dark Dawn is just the same thing again. This led to early reviews criticizing Dark Dawn for the exact fears that Takahashi was trying so hard to avoid, especially the opening of Dark Dawn. It's such a slow unveiling of the world and its mechanics. While nothing new is added to the formula by the first 5 hours of the game, Dark Dawn decides to over-explain quite literally everything to you. Remember how intense the opening of the original game was and it barely had to explain much at all? Remember how aggressive the opening to the Lost Age was, with everything that was going on, and it too didn't need to overly tutorialize the plethora of mechanics available? Well, despite all of the core battle mechanics being fundamentally the same, leading back to Takahashi's worries, they also assumed that all players just recently underwent a lobotomy, as every single detail is explained in long, drawn-out cutscenes. Chris Conselmo gave the game an 8.5 on Destructoid back in the day, but his comments on the opening specifically are a decent summation of what can happen when you over-explain a simple and derivative system from previous entries that didn't need it. Quote, "And the first 2 hours of Golden Sun Dark Dawn doesn't involve much more than dealing with this strange, not very exciting battle system." Hold on. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, just jumping into the bad parts of Dark Dawn, because the truth is, it's complicated. This game is very, complicated. And in fact, I actually really made it a point to go into this video with as fresh of a mind, as clear of expectations as possible. And I wanted to be pure going into it, so the only way I could think to do that was to let the overflowing energy of the Golden Sun itself wash over this episode. So please, hear my cry, Golden Sun, wash over us all. No, that was, nope, too bright. Terrible idea, I can't see a thing. I had two questions going into Dark Dawn. One, is this really as bad as everyone says? And two, is Alex still alive? Yeah, remember at the end of The Lost Age when Alex baited everyone into giving him this chance at immortality, only to be swallowed up by a collapsing mountain after losing a duel to a floating Cyclops Geodude? I have absolutely no idea how he'd survived that, but I just wasn't convinced he had actually died. The only reason I can even think of that made me suspicious of his death is that I've watched far too many anime where people like him just won't go away. Watching the prologue of Dark Dawn really made me reappreciate just how interesting the core decision at the end of The Lost Age really was. While the story of the first two Golden Sun games weren't insanely innovative, the fundamental consequence of each party's main objective led the player into accepting that either choice could come with some serious consequences. If you keep alchemy sealed away, then the world itself will slowly die and destroy all of civilization. However, if you bring alchemy and all of its power back, then people themselves are granted the potential to destroy all of civilization. The party is forced, in a way, to grant humans the benefit of the doubt. Either choice has serious negative consequences and is far more mature of an outcome than most JRPG's typical anime Deus Ex Machina world saving by outrageous resolution that the genre is famous for providing. It reminds me a lot of how so many quests in The Witcher 3 end in what can best be described as which of these choices sucks the least. Wait a minute, did I just compare Golden Sun to The Witcher 3? Our journey opens with Matthew, Karis, and Tyrell, son of Garrett. Damn, dude, Garrett got fat! Very early on, we find out that those who were near the Golden Sun event are aging at a significantly slower rate than normal. We can see this when we end up bumping into Kraden again, and he should now be over 100 years old, but still looks, acts, and feels exactly like he did in the first games. Isaac and Garrett even acknowledge a harsh fact that they might outlive their own children, which is a genuinely horrifying thing to have to consider for a parent. But wait, did you notice something? Do Isaac and Garrett just look like 30-plus-year-old men to you? If things are aging slower, shouldn't they look younger? Is it maybe too weird to have Isaac and Garrett still look like teenagers while having teenage children around them? Oh, okay, fine. But then who does this plot point actually benefit? What's the point? Is the only way that they can express this is that Kraden's still old and not dead yet? How about Matthew's mother and Isaac's wife, Jenna? How does she look? Wait, really? Jenna? Okay, how about my boy Ivan? What about the loving and caring Mia? Sheba? Pierce? Felix? Felix, really? The game wants to convince me that Jenna is a deadbeat mother and that Felix, of all people, wouldn't be investigating all these crazy synergy vortexes popping around? So all of this basically just feels like a way to keep Kraden around when it could have been far more interesting to have him be dead and perhaps maybe have some quest where you have to investigate like his grave or an abandoned study in order to get this information about some predictions that he had about all these events that were happening, which could also show off his brilliance instead of keeping him around to just info dump everybody constantly. Felix and Jenna, though? I mean, I accept that you might not want to just bring back all of the old guard at the risk of being too fan servicey, but Felix? And Matthew's own mother? Those just seem like natural compared to Kraden of all people. But I mean, if the Golden Sun will keep you looking young forever, then let's try this again. Actually, ready this time. Golden Sun, arise! Oh, I think I did it wrong. It should pop up. Should pop up right back here. Oh God, beautiful. So the opening of Dark Dawn is exactly as Chris from Destructoid described. It's slow, laborious, sluggish, It takes way too long to teach you the very basic things that players can learn intuitively for themselves if they were given the opportunity. This isn't just a frustration all these years later, but even during the release of Dark Dawn, this was just such a grave mistake. There were so many good RPGs released between 2009 and 2011 on the DS alone, so the competition was pretty fierce. Golden Sun Dark Dawn was being put up directly against titles like Nostalgia, Phantasy Star Zero, Blue Dragon Awakened Shadow, Etrian Odyssey 3, Radiant Historia, and let's not forget the absolutely insane Dragon Quest IX. I actually remember taking a trip to BlizzCon during this time, and instead of spending my week exploring the city of Anaheim, California, I spent all of my free time in the hotel playing through more of DQ9 because of just how insanely good it is. When Dark Dawn released the following month, I remember having to put effort into staying interested, which left me to drop the game less than 10 hours in. Here I am, 12 years later, finally rectifying that, but when people mention that the opening is a slog, they are very right. I do have to give the intro 1 point of praise though. It's definitely kind of cool battling alongside Isaac and Garrett. Let's not knock that. That's kind of neato. Eventually, we get the basic plot of Dark Dawn, which is that these synergy vortexes are popping up all around the world, sucking the synergy away and wreaking havoc. So across our journey, we grab some more adventurers, such as Mia's son Reef, a new Mercury adept Amity, Aeolio, the little boy who's the son of the pirate Briggs from the Lost Age, who apparently remembers you despite the fact that clearly as the age is and in Lost Age, he didn't even have object permanence yet, Sveta, who is a member of the Beastmen tribe, and Himi, our first ever Venus Mage adept. Oh, actually, wait a minute. Did I just say the plot of these games was to figure out the synergy vortexes? Yeah, my bad. That's not true. It might be the entire story for like the first 10 to 15 hours or so, sure, but eventually the game just kind of stops. Yeah, just before about the halfway part through our adventure, Dark Dawn seemingly gets bored of its narrative and completely transitions into this new story about the Grave Eclipse, which is summoning a bunch of terrible monsters who are killing everyone and destroying everything within the shadow of the eclipse. Ah, yes, I believe this is what we call natural story progression. I think I get what they were going for here. I think there was this primary goal that the party was going for. However, along the way, the Luna Tower is activated and triggers the Grave Eclipse, which is a much larger and more immediate threat. The party is forced to pivot from one issue to another due to the difference in severity and urgency. Honestly, this is what I thought Camelot was going for, and realistically, it's a fine idea. But the problem is that this isn't how it feels at all, and the reason it doesn't feel that way is because for about 5 or so hours before the eclipse even happens, the whole Vortex storyline just ceases to be mentioned at all. Honestly and truly, by the end of the game, I had completely forgotten about the Synergy Vortex plot until it was teased at the very end as a cliffhanger, a cliff that Golden Sun fans have been hanging from for quite some time now. Now, I know some of you don't want to get up any hopes for a Golden Sun 4, but think about it this way. If Klonoa and Live Alive can get remasters, full, proper remastered releases in the same year, if these two games can get any attention at all, then quite honestly, anything is possible. In fact, I'm feeling so hopeful that I think we're going to get something Legend of Dragoon related soon.
Now you're being ridiculous.
There's a lot to unpack in Dark Dawn, but now, after having completed the game 100%, I can safely say that I was surprised, might be the best way to put it. In many ways, I was expecting something far worse, and in other ways, I was expecting something way better. Regardless of expectations, there are so many fun new additions to Dark Dawn though. Small additions, like unlocking the Sun Saga books, which gives you this cool little recap of the adventures from the old games. As a new player, this is a fun way to unlock the story as if it was chronicled within the world of Wayard itself. However, as someone who did play both of those titles, it's fun to see these things in really cute drawings and their nod back to the original games. Oh, and Dark Dawn actually solved one of my biggest complaints from the original games. In the first two titles, you sometimes had to move Jin back and forth around between characters or between set and standby states in order to access certain synergy to use in the world and puzzles in order to progress. Now, if you played monotype Jin setups, then this typically wasn't much of an issue outside certain optional elements in the first game, but in the Lost Age, it could really be a real issue since the rate in which you unlock Jin and the order in which they are given to you is chaotic and all over the place. In the Lost Age episode, I had mentioned how, for example, I wanted to use the tome gather icon? The tome Gutherican. Is it tome mega? The Ricken? I used the Dark Mage class on Sheba. Every time I needed to use Whirlwind though, I needed to unequip the book to get access to Whirlwind, but that wasn't enough. I'd also have to make sure that Sheba was part of the Windseer class line, which meant ensuring that only Jupiter Djinn were active on Sheba and that all others were on standby. The constant back and forth of this, when you consider that you are jumping into combat, you're using summons, Djinn, and re-equipping the too many there again, the Dark Mage book thing, it was all a constant in and out of menus that disrupted the flow of gameplay severely. Dark Dawn completely resolves this. Thank the wise one. Core utility synergies are now available from their elementally correct adept. No matter the Djinn makeup that Matthew has, he will always have Move, for example. Karis, despite having only Mercury Djinn and no Jupiter Djinn at all, will have Whirlwind innately. This is so wonderful. I am so glad this is here. The beauty is that the puzzles can now focus more on simply knowing which synergies to use and how, rather than adding the complication of menu navigation to also figure out how to even get the right Djinn makeup to get the synergy to begin with. You know what's not wonderful though? The fact that so much of the plot is just a rehash of the question, should alchemy be restored? Is this innately an interesting inquiry? Yes. Absolutely. As mentioned earlier in the episode, this conundrum is something I appreciate immensely from the original games. The problem, though, is that we've already wrestled with this. Yeah, alchemy has the potential for bad, but the world crumbling and no longer existing? Well, that's worse. Clearly, it was so beautiful to see this dichotomous relationship between the start of Golden Sun, where the mantra is that alchemy is bad, only to, though through wisdom, experience, and the hero's journey, have the party arrive at a more nuanced interpretation that we shouldn't fear what we can't control, but instead we should use that power wisely. Why is there so much of Dark Dawn's early hours revolving around alchemy bad again? Golden Sun 1 did this thing exactly already. Why have the Lost Age go through so much trouble of taking the player on a journey of gradation that exposes the subtle and undeniable truths of alchemy, only to just say alchemy bad like a 5-year-old? Also, I understand that the whole Golden Sun event was going to reshape the world and all, but where the hell did some of these races and cities come from? I mean, many of the places we visit were places from the first 2 games, and apparently now there's just this ancient race on top of a mountain that's been around for millennia that we all just happened to overlook in the last 2 games. I mean, we knew there were beastmen in the world, but apparently they went from huts to a sweeping kingdom with a royal hierarchy with cultural traditions in a span of, what, 30 years? They didn't have to make a story about the main character's kids, you know? Like, if we really wanted to keep a connection to the Warriors of Vale, but maybe have some massive geographical shifts and radical culture swings, then why not have this take place at like hundreds of years in the future with characters who maybe are descendants of the Warriors of Vale? You could even still keep the whole Golden Sun made people age slower thing and keep Alex as the villain.
Alex is alive? Oh, by God. Oh, by golly, I'm shocked.
Yeah, so Dark Dawn also oddly decides to retread even more old ground by bringing back Alex. Arcanus. Jeez, that is a pretty damn lame nickname, dude. He's also got 2 mercenaries with him named Blados and Chalice. And, well, do they happen to look familiar to you? I don't know. Maybe just a little bit, perhaps, like Minardi and Saturos in the original game. Or just maybe they look a little something like Agatio and Karst from the Lost Age. Yeah. So, remember when Takahashi mentioned in that interview that they were worried about doing the same thing again and it wouldn't lead to success? So apparently they forgot about that because this is the exact same thing. Oh, and the way that they hide Alex is so forced. Like, okay, sure, if you haven't played the first 2 games, then you might notice that the dialogue hints at this character and it has some history with the other characters in some way, and then the reveal at the end might be fun if the Dark Dawn is like your first entry in the Golden Sun series. Like, yeah, okay, yeah, oh, it's an old guy from the old games, cool and all, that's neato. I guess I should play those. But if you're everybody else, anybody who's ever played Golden Sun before, then watching Dark Dawn string you along on who this antagonist might be, oh, it's painful. It's so painful. Who is this masked man that looks a lot like Alex? Certainly it can't be him, just an incredibly strong Mercury adept who's incredibly old, manipulative just like Alex, speaks just like Alex, uses the same vocabulary, and acts just like Alex. It has to be Alex! But oh wait, his name is Arcanus. So never mind, I was wrong the whole time. Stupid Zerbraxy, you dumbass. There's no way that I'll be surprised when the Apollo Sanctum, it's revealed that Arcanus was the whole time actually.
Alex? Is that really you? I had absolutely no idea you were in this game the whole time.
Well, I can at least mark one question as answered, so now to the other one. Is Dark Dawn as bad as everyone says it is? Well, there's still more to dissect, but the question of if Alex is alive, it looks like all my time watching Shonen Jump anime has paid off for my prediction this time. The thing about Dark Dawn is that it's a complicated one. For everything it does well, there's an immediate and evident element that just confuses or frustrates you. Combat is a great one here. It's awesome that all of the Jin have their own unique models now. Every single one of them. That's cool, right? Yet combat animations, especially at the start, are light and lacking any sort of impact. When someone attacked in the original games, the animations were quick and punchy, and the weight of the attacks were evident. Dark Dawn's standard attacks are quick, but they lack that snap, that flick of the wrist. Everything is too smooth and it lacks weight. So many basic hits are just too light. They're like a wet noodle. They're fast and all, sure, but light. Many of the camera angles are also lacking. Seemingly gone are the fast cuts and harsh zooms as certain attacks and abilities would go off. Now everything is panned out further, smoother, and significantly less dramatic. There are several Jin unlocks early on in the game that revolve around reviving party members. While this may seem like a good thing, the reality is that absolutely nothing is threatening for quite some time, so you end up with Jin that just sit there, unused for hours and hours, because of course the early game is easy. So is combat crap in Dark Dawn? Absolutely not. I mean, first off, it has a wonderful battle theme. I think it has another battle theme that competes or is actually better than anything in the games prior. Oh, and the weapon system is fantastic. Now weapons don't just have crit and howl effects, but they now level up the more you use them, unlocking more and more potential out of them. A sword might have an AoE spin attack, a strong elemental howl, and a normal crit strike all in one. Some weapons even have up to 4 different abilities to unlock within them, some of which elemental in nature, which creates all new choices to make. Is this upgrade actually an upgrade? Sure, it might do more damage, but I unlocked the howl effect of the elemental nature that I want on this character, which, while then this is a slight upgrade to the weapon by base attack, its howl is all wrong, which means the crits aren't going to be as good. These moments are real debates that you have over your equipment to give your characters, and it makes the builds of each party member more and more unique across all players. This compounds itself especially when you get characters like Himi and Sveta. Himi is our first mage-like Venus adept who has a fascinating range of support, debuff, and control synergy. I bounced around a few classes with her, but settled on the Miku class line, which is pure Venus Jin monotype, and man, her support potential is absolutely outrageous. The insane attack increase from the skill Weapons Grace allows characters like Matthew as a Chaos Lord class to hit like mad. Another character that hits absolutely like a fucking freight train is Sveta, who is absolutely my favorite character to play in all 3 games. She is a beastman, as I mentioned earlier. The key thing here is that you can sacrifice a turn to go into beast form. You can no longer use Jin, which cripples your ability to summon, but the strength of Sveta while you're in the beast form it just goes through the roof. She also gains access to the ability to not only attack and use synergy like normal, but also has a built-in innate AoE attack. The risk and reward of going in and out of beast form and when to do that is an incredibly fun and rewarding balance the more and more comfortable you get with it. But then there's the summons, which are basically all the same outside a couple. Now, granted, the animations for the summons are absolutely beautiful and stunning for the DS, but they couldn't have like maybe redone more of them or added a couple more new ones, like really? You even have the Golden Sun event, which is an easy lore reason to just introduce a ton of new tablets into the world that contains summons the player just hadn't seen before. But on the flip side, there is another good thing, which is that finding the summons is potentially more fun than ever. They are cleverly hidden, and most of the optional material in the game in general is done very, very well, as the player will feel incredibly satisfied in locating each extra goodie.
That is, unless you've passed a point of no return already, in which case, well, then you're screwed. The thing is, to be honest, I'm not even entirely against points of no return on their own. Okay? Okay, are we good? No, but screw it, I'm really not! Oh, shit!
Dark Dawn is pretty famous in the Golden Sun community for having points of no return. Moments in the game that act exactly as they sound. Once you pass this point, you can never return back. Now, many games do this, especially near the end of the journey. However, some do it really early on. Take Final Fantasy VII and the plate falling in Midgar as a pretty famous example. Points of no return can be incredibly powerful as a narrative tool that allows the designers to add a sense of reality to a fictional world. It provides the illusion that the setting is alive and changing around the player in accordance to their actions or inaction. However, Dark Dawn has some serious problems with this, 3 in particular. First, and easily the loudest complaint from fans about the points of no return, is how poorly these moments are telegraphed. Honestly, at first glance, this seems like an obvious issue. Why wouldn't you tell the player that the next step in the journey is about to lock them from areas that they had just visited prior? Really, why wouldn't you do that? Well, in terms of narrative, why would you tell them? Imagine if before the falling of the plate in Midgar, the game threw up a message that said, some serious shit is about to happen. That would completely ruin all narrative pacing and moments of surprise in the plot. For those players who are interested in an immersive journey, these meta prompts can cripple the experience or, at best, reduce the impact of those moments on a player since they've had warning that something large, whatever it might be, is about to happen. But Golden Sun is a bit different from Final Fantasy VII. The falling of the plate in Final Fantasy VII doesn't lock the player out of acquiring the strongest summon, or unlocking a critical skill, or anything of that nature. Granted, Final Fantasy VII definitely has its own point of no return moments that can be really frustrating for collecting, but what makes this so disheartening in Dark Dawn in particular is the second reason why these points of no return fail in this particular journey. The several no return moments do lock the player out of accessing certain summons, and far more importantly, from unlocking certain Jinn. These little elemental creatures are critical to the gameplay of Golden Sun. All 3 of the games. They are the core to everything. Having more Jinn allows you access to more skills, higher stats, rearranging of those stats, access to summons, and the regularity at which you can pull them out, and even which classes you have access to. If you want to make Matthew a Chaos Lord like I did, for example, then not only do you need 7 Mars and 2 Venus Jinn unlocked to equip to him, but you actually need to unlock 65 of the 72 Jinn at the very least, because you can never have a party member with more than 1 Jinn more or less than any other. So on all party members, Jinn counts are normalized, which honestly is fine, but it means that missing a Jinn has significantly more consequences in Golden Sun than missing almost any other collectible in any other JRPG. The third and most frustrating part of these point of no return moments is that even at the very, very end of the game, there still aren't any ways back at all. They are truly points of no return. While many games will entirely open up after you've beaten the main plot, or sometimes right near the end,
Nope! Dark Dawn does not offer that same courtesy at all. You're being bad.
if missing Jinn and summons was but a temporary consequence, then fine, sure. I actually think then that this whole idea would work out to convey a more living narrative to help Weird and the plot feel more genuine and animated, and it might even make the whole Grave Eclipse flip be that much more impactful. However, at the end of The Lost Age, for example, the entire world opens up. At the end of Dark Dawn, everything you missed stays missed, with no player agency or ability to return and fully explore the world to any capacity.
I'm actually so thankful, though, that many of you warned me about this beforehand because, well, because of that warning, I knew to be extra careful, and from that, I was able to make my first playthrough of Dark Dawn have every Djinn, every summon, every unlock, and every super boss. How? Well, it's really easy. It's incredible intellect, wit, skill, cunning, and a strategy guide.
Golden Sun Dark Dawn is an enigmatic presence in the Golden Sun discussion. Many view it as a disgrace, an insult to the franchise, and the reason for its current death, or hiatus if you're more on the optimistic side. Yet throughout my deep dive into the Golden Sun fanbase consciousness, and far too many YouTube videos, there are a surprisingly large portion of the fanbase that finds Dark Dawn to be an underrated gem that, while having its shortcomings, is a competent JRPG and a worthy sequel to the phenomenal duology that came before it. As I mentioned in my previous 2 episodes, I had finished the original Golden Sun around high school, but had never finished The Lost Age until within the last year of this recording. Now, having played both of those 2 games, Golden Sun has skyrocketed into one of my favorite JRPG franchises ever, and The Lost Age is in my top 5 personal JRPGs I've yet to have ever played. As a rather new fan to the series at large, I find myself in a rather unique perspective. I didn't wait the 7 years of darkness for Dark Dawn. I didn't get disappointed and haven't had the decade plus worth of time to continue to let that disappointment fester and build up. I had a small understanding of what I was going to play, but I was able to really jump into this adventure with a fresh mind and take it without any strong emotion or expectation. And with that, I have to say that Golden Sun Dark Dawn is totally, absolutely, without a doubt, no question, it's definitively
good. It's good. I mean, it's the weakest of the 3, yeah, but it's good. Why do I feel like I still just pissed a bunch of people off?
The legacy that Dark Dawn has left behind is so conflicting and also pretty unfair in a lot of ways. I read and heard from so many people that things like its music, for example, was bad and generic. Really? Generic? I mean, it just seems like a clear extension of Golden Sun in The Lost Age, but really? Motoi Sakuraba even intentionally limited himself at times to the GBA sound chip instruments in order to create a more collaborative handoff between the 2 generations of consoles for the Golden Sun games. This is the criticism that surprised me the most, because quite honestly, as a massive fan of the first 2 games' music, I'm currently leaning towards Dark Dawn actually being my favorite of the 3 in terms of overall sound design. Hearing things like the Belinsk Animals little band music is so fun and catchy. Also, there are like 5 different battle themes, like 4 different boss themes, one of which is actually a really fun nod to the original GBA game's Saturos boss theme, but this one in particular. How do you hear this song and not absolutely fall in love? There's even that one part in the song where it almost sounds like an Advance Wars game. I will absolutely take any opportunity to shout at Advance Wars. What's also interesting about that track in particular is that it's the original battle theme that plays when Matthew and Karis travel through the woods with Isaac and Garrett. Once Garrett and Isaac then leave the party, we get the core game's battle theme. However, this original music returns at the very end. While there is a unique battle song that occurs while you are within the shadow of the eclipse fighting the shadow monsters, when you're anywhere outside that in the world and are at the end of the game, that original battle theme returns back. It's the perfect full circle from the start. It's as if Isaac and Garrett are passing on the torch to this new team, to the new Warriors of Vale, if you will. Also, can we all just appreciate how wonderful this moment in the Opera House is with the King of the Beastmen? He's trying to stand strong with his soldiers and is describing the music he's hearing from within the building, and the song actually changes based on the acknowledgement of new instruments becoming audible. Yo, I mean, that's just awesome. It's just so cool. I really love stuff like that. And then there's things like this damn onward prompt that pops up every time you take control of the party. It's such a small thing that only appears for like a second or so, but am I the only one who hates this? Seeing the stylus pop up regularly with a text prompt just takes me out of the adventure so quickly. Like, okay, yeah, oh, I know I have control of the party again because the dialogue stopped. You don't need to double check that my brain is still functioning by quite literally throwing up a message that's like, okay, you can play again. Oh, hey, thank you, Camelot. I didn't even know I was playing a video game to begin with. There are still a couple questions that I have for Camelot, though. One, what the hell is the slap synergy? Every time I use it, I just feel like I'm making Sveta slap some cheeks. I mean, even just the way the noses jiggle on the statues as the slap hits, it's so clearly ready to be a butt joke. Like, Sveta is over here mastering the art of the mental ass smack. Damn, girl. Go get him. Oh, and while we're on synergies, can someone tell me why the game waited 30 hours to bring back Mind Read? I mean, if I was moving quickly through the game, it's like 2/3 of the way through Dark Dawn that Mind Read returns. It's my absolute favorite synergy because of just how much it adds to the world and everything around it. I sang its praises in the previous 2 episodes of Golden Sun because I genuinely believe that it's one of the most creative and impactful introductions to this franchise and to the JRPG formula at large. Not only does it add to the experience of the world, to the lore of Weyard as you delved into the minds of others. Not only did it make you feel as the character that you're talking to acts tough and confident, only to then be having thoughts of fear and doubt internally. Camelot was able to have some real, genuine humanity to random NPCs of all things because of this synergy in a way that most other games never could. And Dark Dawn adds an even deeper layer to this by not only being able to mind read people, but also being able to use the synergy on dead things in order to know what they were last thinking. Holy shit, that is awesome. And the times that you do get to use it is wonderful, but you don't get to until the very end of the game, and it just makes me wonder why. Why hold off something so fundamental to Golden Sun? Why hold off on a synergy that adds to the enjoyment to the world to that degree? Imagine if The Witcher 3 held off on Witcher Sense until the end. Or if Horizon Zero Dawn and Forbidden West didn't let Aloy access the power of her focus until almost the finale. You get to learn so much more about these worlds in a deeper capacity than ever because of these mechanics. And Golden Sun already did it in the last 2 games so well, so why? Why stop now? Why wait until the final few hours to introduce something lore-changing? Like the fact that Dark Adepts exist. The final 8th of Dark Dawn starts to really dabble into some really cool things that could change the entire landscape of how players view the world within Golden Sun and all of what we knew before it. Introducing Umbra magic and the fact that an entire civilization has mastered it opens so much to this world, and it's even further compounded by acknowledging that at one time, light magic, soul magic, was already also utilized by adepts of that culture. Like, Camelot just added 2 entire schools of magic to the Golden Sun formula, but held off until the last couple of hours, which just begs the question, why? This is a phenomenal new introduction. The game should have been more about this stuff, and have the gravy clips be the catalyst for this story, and completely drop what the hell was the original plot again? Oh, yeah. It was some fucking synergy suckers or something. I don't know. I mean, imagine if in the next Golden Sun game, hold on, I know. Don't get your hopes up on this one. I know. Trust me. I'm a huge Legend of Dragoon fan. I know what it's like to wait decades and decades to still only be disappointed by absolutely nothing. Like, I get it. I'm with you guys. I'm with you. But imagine if in Golden Sun 4, we still have a 4 party member active battle system, but 6 party members total. And then now we can have Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Mercury, and Umbra and Sol adepts into the mix, which could really force the player into some interesting party compositions, as now you've opened up the potential for Sol and Umbra Jinn to also exist in the world somewhere, but you wouldn't have access to every core adept at any given moment. There is still so much more to dive into with this new introduction, and I understand that Dark Dawn ended up being a cliffhanger, and clearly Camelot was expecting to do this way better, but all of this new stuff could have been put in the beginning, and then it would have allowed the story to have these more new foundational elements to the overall experience, and the player wouldn't have had to have this whole bait and switch on what the story was, because honestly, sometimes I still forget that synergy vortexes are actually the opening plot of Dark Dawn that never gets resolved. I think it's all of this. I think now I fully understand how so many people feel about Golden Sun Dark Dawn. It is, in many ways, it's actually way better than what so much of the fan base sells it as. But in other ways, it's a grossly wasted potential of a video game. I think the highs of Dark Dawn are genuinely really high, like the music, the new races, the weapon system, and much more. But those lows, they could be exhausting because it just doesn't seem to make sense how some of these issues exist within the same framework of Golden Sun and the Lost Age of all things. Why have 4 super bosses only to have 2 of them be repeats? The whole reason the Star Magician is difficult is figuring it out. I've already done that now. Why have the plot change so aggressively midway? Why have this whole rock feather subplot at all? Why do we have so many damn points of no return in a game designed around collecting as a core part of not just its story and lore, but as a fundamental gameplay mechanic that affects directly how many skills, spells, and classes you can have access to, while also limiting the potential of statistical growth for each individual character? The subtitle of Dark Dawn is an absolutely brilliant oxymoron, but I don't think Camelot was expecting that it would be such a wonderful representation of this game's own place in the franchise. Yes, I think the hate is overdone, but I've also been there. I know those feelings of disappointment in a game after waiting years and years and years, and when it finally releases, it's so much of what you didn't want. That was Diablo 3 for me, and I'm still not over it, and that game's not even bad. It's not what I wanted at all. Dark Dawn, the game itself, is an oxymoron of its own design. It isn't sure of what it wants to be. It's not sure of the story it wants to tell. It's not sure if it wants to keep the old characters around or focus entirely on new ones. The whole thing feels unconfident in itself. I don't think it's bad at all, I really don't. But I do think that it finally figured out what its identity was supposed to be far, far too late. Because of that, the first 2 titles have completely eclipsed Dark Dawn's place in this discussion about Golden Sun. This truly saddens me because I think the overall experience is still one of a warm and welcoming JRPG that anyone can jump into. Its strengths are still capitalizing on what the first 2 entries did so dang well all those years ago. I really think Golden Sun Dark Dawn deserves way more praise and recognition than it gets, but I also really understand your frustrations. As I mentioned before, seriously, if Klonoa and Live Alive can get releases, then there's hope for a Golden Sun 4. I mean, hell, if Bravely Default 2 can happen and Tactics Ogre can get another remaster, then truly, there's totally a possibility for a Golden Sun 4 in the future. There's more of a chance for Golden Sun 4 than a Legend of Dragoon 2, so... well, that hurt. Now that I've played through all 3 Golden Sun games, I'm in. Seriously, I'm in. I'm with you. I totally get it. I get the love. I understand the praise, and I think that these titles deserve it. The whole series deserves the love that it has received over the years, and honestly, it deserves even way more. I mean, heck, who knows? Maybe, just maybe, the next video that I make on Golden Sun will be about a brand new entry in the series. Probably not, I mean, but that'd be cool though, right? Like, that'd be pretty neat. But while we're all waiting,
I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye!